Hey everybody, this is Adam Needens, and this is going to be assessing and evaluating within our schools. So let's be honest for a minute here. As teachers and educators, we have some certain roles that we have to do on a day-to-day basis, and there's probably a ton that most people don't recognize. So let's look at some of those real quick. We teach, we go through our day-to-day planning, we have to understand our curriculum, and then we are also assessing and evaluating daily. On probably a daily basis, we go through being a counselor, being a nurse, sometimes a part-time mom or dad, depending on your district, playing some of those roles, mentor, a coach. I've noticed more and more as technology becomes more prevalent in schools that we become tech support sometimes. Sometimes there's issues with our students and their food and transportation that we end up taking care of. I'm sure there's a ton more that we could list, but those were some of them. So now I want to get into what do we want for our students. So we need to look at what is the end goal through all this assessing and evaluating. What's our ultimate goal that comes out of all of this? We want success. We want achievement, happiness, health, confidence, satisfaction. Most students look at the short-term goals, depending on whether that's a second grader and they just want to go to recess, or maybe it's a 12-year-old and they're working on friendships and things like that, or maybe it's a 15, 16-year-old and they're looking at, I need to get a car or a job and certain things like that right away. Whereas adults are looking more at the long-term thing. You see a sixth grader and you're thinking, I want this for middle school, high school, and after. Well, that sixth grader is just looking at that day or that week or just sixth grade. You can get into a 15, 16, 17-year-old. They're worried about their social life more than anything at that point, not necessarily what kind of grades they're getting or what they're going to do after high school. But I feel like as teachers and adults and parents, we just want an overall sense of well-being for our students. And then there's this quote down below. If our goal in Ontario is for all of our students to become active members of their communities, able to bring about positive change and to flourish in society, we must heighten our focus on well-being as a crucial prerequisite for long-term success. We must also acknowledge that the well-being of our children and youth is our priority as a society. We look at that goal. What is that end goal? Being successful in our community, right? So then we look at this chart here. What affects our students? If you look at the very center of this chart, you're going to see students' well-being, and then it's going to branch out and branch out and branch out and get bigger and bigger here. But you have those four aspects right around a student. And then you have your sources in the blue on the outside of that. Well, those students are looking at their school environment, their family environment. They have household resources available or not available. What is their community and neighborhood like? What kind of peers do they have? Then at school, well, what are their teachers like with them? And then they're going to branch out even further into some of these. Now, these ones out in the gray, you're probably not going to have most students realizing that all of this stuff is going on, but it is playing a part in their day-to-day life because it's going to shrink down to that stuff in the blue, which is affecting that stuff more into the middle. So I like this chart a lot on the fact that its core is the student's well-being, but look at everything that's affecting our students on a day-to-day basis. How we operate within our school, and is it working? What's the difference? So here's our difference. We're going to focus on assessment and evaluation. Assessment is a process of collecting, reviewing, and using data for the purpose of improvement in the current performance. So we're looking at providing feedback on performance and areas of improvement, and this is more of a diagnostic check. Your evaluation is described as an act of passing judgment based on the basis of set standards. So this determines the extent to which objectives are being achieved, and this is more of a judgmental type factor. Going back to the assessment, you're collecting data is what's going on. This should be happening all the time, and then this is giving you that diagnostic feedback of, wow, this really worked and this really didn't work, and I need to change something to improve on whatever needs to be improved on. Your evaluation is set as more like a rubric almost of, here's the standards of what you're needing to be meeting, and you're at this level right now. So what are you going to do to improve to get to the next level up? Or are you already at mastery? I could look at it like a teacher's end, and the principal comes in to evaluate me. There's going to be a set rubric of things that I need to be looking for or working towards. And I might be on proficient, but is there a standard above that? A standard of excellence or mastery or wherever, and how do I get to that level? But that's more of a judgmental thing, that the principal coming in and evaluating me. Just like a standardized test would be more of you could say it's an assessment, but it's going to be an evaluation of, this is how smart that student is. This is what that student understands. So what we know and how it operates in assessment. You go through some of these, identify individual student weaknesses and strengths. You're providing specialized academic support based on that. So you're assessing, and this student is needing extra assistance in reading. So you're going to send them to that program or whatever you have in place, title reading, tier reading, however you want to go through that stuff and go through that process of giving them their special services that they're needing. Gather and interpret the information. Look at the data and what is it telling you. Measure achievement. It's measuring achievement over time. We could be assessing day to day, month to month on things, 3 times a year or every 9 weeks. You could look at something from 2nd grade to 3rd grade to 4th grade and on up, freshman, sophomore to junior and on up. How are they improving? It's going to also rank students amongst a whole group. Could be a class, could be a school, could be a district, could be the state. Your evaluation, on the other hand, well-run classes. I love this. Well-run classes and effective programs are those that can demonstrate the achievement of results. Results are derived from good management. Good management is based on good decision-making. Good decision-making depends on good information, and good information requires good data and careful analysis of that data. So to go through all that evaluation stuff, you better be darn good at that assessment stuff on the other side. This chart here, so it's going to look at some standards. What are our standards? You look at this evaluation model or this assessment model, it's going to say evaluation determines whether a standard was met. So is it a success or is it a failure? Assessment provides feedback on that performance. What are the strengths and areas for improvement? What insights do you gather from this? So you're looking at it as an assessment form of, how can I improve? The evaluation was, is the standard met? So you look at the chart down here, you have good performance, poor performance. You see in the middle, you have a measured performance. Here's where you should be, perhaps. Well, if you go above that, you're going to see, hey, nice job, determines that the measured performance, well, maybe you were looking for something a little bit higher than that, and it's a failure. Or maybe you set your standard a little bit lower, and hey, it looks like we did an awesome job. However, on the right-hand side, you're going to look at the assessor provides feedback about how the performance was improved. The assessor provides feedback on what made the performance as strong as it was. So the assessment part of everything is going to lead to, well, your evaluations. And it says, what are our standards? If you're going to set your standards lower, you may be reaching all of those things. That may not be the standard that you need to be at. Are you pushing yourself, and are you evaluating yourself enough to keep improving and moving up those levels? We all know state assessments and state standards are set. We're supposed to be meeting all of those standards. How we have been assessing and evaluating. Here's how kind of teachers and for the most part, students would look at this stuff. Students see the end goal of a report card. I got all A's. Oh, I got an F in something, whatever that may be. Hey, mom and dad, I got all A's and B's. Good for me, right? So what we've been going through is a process of, we're teaching to the tests, and the students learn for the test, and then they remember for that test. And then what happens after they remember that test and they get an A on it? Yay, I got an A. A month later, you come back to it, they've forgotten everything and they moved on. They don't remember anything from that test. So is cramming for the grade, is cramming for the test, is being score driven really the end result that we're looking for? Or are you wanting to sustain academic success and growth and critical thinking and building upon all of these areas outside just the standardized test? So we want to create our well-rounded individuals, not just focus on test to test to test. Did I meet the assessment and did I meet the evaluation at the end of the year, or however you may be looking at that. So what's the purpose? Well, what are the students' needs? We evaluate through here. We assess through here. What are our students' needs? Every district, every building is going to be different on that. You're going to have different demographics of students coming in and out. We need to look at what has to be taught, and then are they understanding the information? Are they understanding enough to be at a mastery level, or are they understanding enough to get by? To go back to that previous slide, are they understanding enough to pass the test? Or are they going to be able to use this information down the road to have a positive impact somehow? Our assessments are going to show progress one way or the other. Are they improving or are they not? And what do we need to be doing from then on out? So what methods of teaching are working? If there's changes that need to be made, let's make those changes. This style of me doing this project isn't working. I need to find a new project to get this information to these kids because they're simply not understanding what I'm doing. Maybe this form of assessment is showing me that whatever I am doing is really working. Maybe I can share that information with other teachers saying, hey, this strategy is really working for my kids. Maybe we try it in the whole building. Can they demonstrate and share? Can our students take all of this information, all of these things that they're learning, and actually share and demonstrate with other people how it's utilized, how to be successful with this information. We also need to look at assessment is really going to motivate performance. Hey, I see success here and I want to keep working for that, and I see an end goal of this, this, and this moving forward. You can look at it as a student, you could look at it as a teacher. It's gonna motivate performance if it's done correctly for both ends. Issues with our style of assessing. We got to go through and look at these things. Indirect observation of student learning. There's not enough sampling. If you're going to go through state assessments, that's a one-time test for 2 days maybe. What did they gain throughout the whole course of the year? You're looking at 2 days. Maybe they had an awful day at home or they didn't get sleep or something like that. You have a narrow view or a scope of something because you're only getting this assessment and this evaluation a couple of times perhaps. This should be something that's done over a long period of time. There's not enough exceptions made on a district-by-district case. Looking at the cultural, the socioeconomic, and the disadvantaged differences, you can have state assessments. That state, I'm in Kansas, that state may look at, I was in Lyons, we're a 3A school, and they're going to be looking completely different demographics than what you're going to see in Overland Park, Kansas, up by Kansas City, or you're going to have something completely different out in liberal Kansas out west. All these demographics are going to change, but our state standards are the same for everybody. Lasting inferences made by one test. This is who I am based on that test? No, come on. And you're looking almost like at a punishment mentality. You don't get good grades, or you don't get good scores, you don't get this, this, and this. So what do we do now? Establish leadership, establish a culture, put relationship first, understand your students. You need to be responsive, be culturally relevant, collaborate with families, know how to use this data, prioritize student well-being, give students a sense of belonging, adapt based on students' needs, parental involvement, limit bullying, and community involvement. Assess on a daily basis, evaluate yourself on a daily basis. This isn't a 1, 2, 3 time thing a year. This should be done every single day. If you're doing these things on this slide, you're going to be successful day in, day out. You're going to end up being successful over the long run, year after year after year. If you're evaluating yourself, you're evaluating your class, you're evaluating your students on a day-to-day basis. How did I do today as a teacher? Did I get my information across? These things on this slide right here are going to involve student success in the long run. So that was my presentation. Here's a list of the references that were throughout the presentation. If you're needing more information, you can check these out. And I thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Have a good day.